So really what we're saying here is you need to choose the method that you prefer.
I always preferred the rhythm method.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
I always found it to be very productive.
You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast with Dex and Mac. I got mouths to feed, so let's get this thing started. Time is money, friend.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Azeroth. You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast, your guide to making gold in World of Warcraft. This is episode 20. I'm your host, Dex, coming to you from Napa, California. With me on Skype is a man who's so into deep frying turkeys that he would have even done it on the Hindenburg. My co-host, Mac, from Anchorage, Alaska. Happy belated Thanksgiving, Mac.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving. You know, I've heard they're safe to use anywhere. You know, living room.
I mean, I'm not indicating that an ancestor of yours is the one that cooked with an open flame on the Hindenburg. I'm not indicating that. But,
yeah, that's always possible, you know. No, that would have ended the bloodline.
Oh, man.
Some people would say that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I wasn't going to go there, not out loud. I thought it in my head. I do have a filter. So
yeah.
I just don't usually use it. But so as you know,
mine pops up after the fact.
As you know, Mac, right before we tried to record the first time, my wife came in frantic. We've been gone from our house for 10 or 11 days, and she went in, used the bathroom, washed her hands in one of the two sinks in our bathroom, and the sink right next to her, she looked over, and there was a great big bat sitting there drinking water out of the sink. So my wife, who is terrified of even the smallest of spiders or little bugs, I think she's afraid of ladybugs, I don't know, she lost her mind. So so I had to go and get rid of a bat, and tomorrow I have to get people to come out to check my attic and
evict some squatters
and get rid of some bats. So that's what I will be doing in between editing this podcast tomorrow.
I'll make sure to notify PETA ahead of time so they can be there. No.
Oh, come on now. I will humanely get rid of the bats. As far as anybody knows. I mean, it's not like it's easy to follow all the laws here. I do live in California, so
there's a new one every minute, isn't there?
Well, and they're not real sure that they know what they're doing with the laws out here either. I mean, come on, this is the state that just on our last ballot made plastic baggies illegal the same time that they made pot legal. So obviously not thinking that through.
So now you got to brown bag it when you're doing that stuff, right?
I don't know, man. I don't know what they're gonna do, but
you have to bring your reusable bag to the.
Well, at any rate, happy belated Thanksgiving to all of you that are listening as well. We got about 16 minutes into take 2 of the podcast, and then we had what has become known as our monthly technical difficulty, where Mac lost his recording. So we have high hopes. We have high hopes that at a 1:45 in the morning, this one is going to this one's going to complete.
For Christmas, I'm getting a backup recording device.
Yeah. You know what I'm getting for Christmas? I'm getting a backup co-host. So, he went there. So anyway, I just, as most of you know, I guess I just got back from my vacation in Chicago and Minneapolis, and I am on very little sleep. So I hope you guys will forgive me if I'm a little less coherent than I normally am, or I should say even less coherent than I normally am.
And it's my fault that you're up even later.
Well, yeah, the bat gets credit for some of it too, but anyway, I wanted to give a big thank you to those that sent suggestions for places to eat while I was on vacation. I mean, of course, I hit my favorite pizza place, Giordano's in Chicago. Anybody who lives out there probably is aware of that pizza place. Nothing like Chicago-style pizza, and if anybody says there's another kind of pizza that's better, I will debate you on that. anyway, I highly recommend it. And then when I was in Minneapolis, I got to see my Vikings beat the Cardinals at U.S. Bank Stadium. My first time out there at the new stadium, and it was a blast. The Thanksgiving game that we just had versus the Lions, not so much. But I'm not going to whine to everybody about how that one ended up. I won't get into exactly how we were robbed, but the person that did it had stripes on.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Just running the wrong direction, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so obviously I haven't played WoW in 10 or 11 days since we recorded our last episode, and I quickly edited it and finishing it just before leaving town. So I literally have not played between the two podcasts that you're hearing. So I have nothing new in game to talk about, unfortunately. But this week we're going to talk about making good decisions about which gold making method is right for you, and how to make those decisions for yourself. But first, Mac, why don't you tell us about what you did this week?
Well, this is my first Thanksgiving in about 7 years that I've actually had off. And Mrs. Mack said I had to spend time with the family and socialize instead of game. So we made plans for Thanksgiving. This year, my youngest and her husband decided they were going to do Thanksgiving at their house. And my wife said, we don't have to do anything. We just have to show up. And I'm like, cool. More time for gaming. And then I get a phone call saying they want you to make stuffed leg of lamb to go along with everything else. So I ended up having to cook on Thanksgiving.
But other than that, nothing.
Yeah, no, other than that, nothing. Yeah.
Other than cooking a lamb, we don't need to do a thing. Piece of cake. It'll be a piece of cake. Oh, by the way, can you bring a piece of cake?
Yeah, we did
make
that.
A cake?
Pie, yeah. No, it was all good. No, we had fun. Got back. I've been enjoying leveling. I started leveling my rogue past 100 this week, and starting to work him up to 110. I've got my druid out there, and my druid, my DK, and my pally. I have a complaint about the druid campaign quest. There's a part of the campaign quest where you have this little thing where you get a bag of seeds, and you're supposed to, as you kill mobs, you're supposed to plant these seeds, and that is taking way too dang long. And it's not that I'm not. You have to kill 100 mobs and plant these seeds. It's that I forget to use the damn seeds.
Could possibly alcohol be involved in this story in any way?
Maybe.
Is it like you forget after the third scotch or something like that?
Maybe the fourth. No, it's a lot of times I'm in a group or something because my druid's guardian spec, so I am playing the tank. So a lot of times I'm the one out front moving around when I'm with the group. So I do forget to click those stupid seeds. And it is becoming. I'm almost done with it now, but it's taken me a lot longer than it should to complete that portion of the campaign.
Yeah, well, I've played MMOs with you for a long time, and I know the pattern. It's getting late at night. We've all been at it for a little while, and
there's nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah, a couple of people are calling it a night. Groups are breaking up, and somebody will say, well, since there's not going to be anybody playing any longer, I'll just go do something solo. And Mac will say, oh, no, I still got another hour in me. And they're like, well, yeah, but your last hour is really not,
it's not quality playtime.
It's just the last hour is a lot of mumbling and grumbling and burping and...
Oh, come on. It's not always that bad. It happens once or twice in a 12-year period.
Don't make me live stream our play. Oh, boy. So besides...
Okay, maybe 3 times.
Yeah. So besides completely, drunk dialing everybody while you're trying to... I don't know. Don't worry, I'll edit all that out.
Yeah, I've seen your editing, yeah. Alvin and the Chipmunks.
How'd you know about that? Did somebody tell you about that?
No, I listened to the thing because I'd have to figure out what you've cut out and left in.
You listened to the show after? I didn't know you did that.
I listen to every show.
I will be more selective in what I edit. I like the idea of people laughing behind your back. Now that you know that they're doing it, it's not as much fun. So I'll have to change that. I'll have to change that up a little bit.
I have to see what you've done to distort the truth or distort what we've said.
Well, besides stumbling through your druid situation there, what else has been going on for you?
I sold another Sky Golem on Whisperwind. I haven't checked to see if I sold my one on Dalaran yet, so that's a lot of fun. Speaking of Dalaran, we did have someone who listens to the podcast. They actually asked me. They said they made an alliance tune on Dalaran and wanted to find a guild over there on Dalaran, and I apologized profusely and told them I don't. My alliance tunes are all over on Whisperwind,
right.
And then I made the mistake of saying, I'll ask my Horde guild if anyone knows a good alliance guild on this, which didn't go over well, and no one would admit to knowing a good alliance guild. I mean, that's probably one of the better things that was told to me. But
I imagine things like oxymoron were thrown about.
Well, they called me a moron. I know.
Yeah, well, but that had nothing to do with the question.
There was no
asking.
oxy in it at all.
Well, I mean, come on. You're going to have to choose your source a little bit better than that to get your information. I mean, that's kind of like walking up to a Hillary Clinton supporter after the election and asking where the after election party was being held. I don't think they're going to be really anxious to give you that information. So.
They're a good group of people, and since we started the podcast, I started brand new on that server, and those are the only people I know on the server besides you. And sometimes they're better company.
And me and Alliance characters, I don't have them. So.
You did for a very short time.
Hey, all right, okay. We won't talk about.
I've outed you.
We won't talk about things that you used to do in a life that's better left buried. Okay, won't get into that. So that's for another show.
Yeah,
but
the hazard of knowing each other as long as we've known each other, we know the skeletons in each other's closets.
Well, when you mentioned about the sky,
or the bats in your closet.
There you go.
You now have a bat cave.
I do. Hey, I'm Batman now. I just realized I'm Batman. I got rid of the bat in my house. I'm Batman.
Or a batless man.
I am batless. That doesn't sound as good. Batman sounds better. I have to tell my wife that one, although I don't think she's on the couch right now, freaking out. She's just shivering. You should have seen the look on her face when I told her that we lost the first 16 minutes of the podcast and we had to start over, because she's on the couch. She will not go to bed until I go to bed with her, and it's nearly 2 a.m. And
he's going to blame it on me again.
She is freaked out about it. I checked. I made sure there were no other bats in the house that I could find, because bats aren't good at hiding or anything, are they? I don't think they. But
they hide upside down.
It made her feel better that I said that there weren't any more. So that's. so anyway, yeah, but
if you could talk to the when you get the exterminator over there and just tell them, when you first stick your head up in there, give a loud scream just to I've never seen that many. No.
Well, I have to instruct the exterminator when she asks how many were actually up there to say, oh, just a couple. 100.
1,000, yeah.
Because bats, it's one thing I do know about bats is they're not solitary creatures. I wanted to say when you mentioned about the sky golems that you sold. Now I've been gone for about a week and a half, but my understanding is that they're holding their price pretty well. And that
they're not quite as high as they were, but they're still holding. I mean, they're still about twice what they were when we started the podcast about 20 weeks ago.
Yeah, they're normal. Their normal level. They're still about twice that then.
Yeah, I sold the one I sold on Whisper Wind was about $80K.
Okay. So. All right. A couple things I wanted to cover, and it's funny when you have to re-record a podcast, you forget which things you've said in the current take of the podcast. So you'll be. So
it's all my fault, folks.
Yeah, you'll be sure to tell me if I have already said this in this podcast. But I also wanted to talk about, while I was gone on my trip. I was able to check in on a few things online. I didn't have the greatest of internet connections while I was out and about, but I did notice that that 7.1.5 did hit the PTR as expected, but what was unexpected was the change to tokens. Have I talked about that yet?
No. Okay. That was lost.
That was lost.
You talked about that right about the time my recording.
Well, I'll say it with the same level of enthusiasm, and you'll pretend like you're hearing it for the first time again.
My God, really? I mean, sorry.
Okay,
soon?
I'll edit out that little part where you sounded like a little girl.
Oh.
Just now. Anyway. Or maybe I'll leave it in and adjust the pitch.
Jeez.
No, I'll adjust it the other way to make you sound more manly this time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anyway, what happened was they added the change to tokens so that they're going to work with Blizzard Balance, and that was not expected to go on the PTR so soon by most of us. And so when that happened, the reaction to it, from what I understand, I know that tokens were about 40K or so, maybe a little less, when I left on my trip. And from what I read, they jumped up to like 60K, like overnight. So I'm expecting that trend to continue. There are a lot of questions that people still have about it. As most of you probably know, there's currently a cap on how many you can get. You can get 36 every 24 months, and that's because they don't want somebody to buy 15 years of game time on a game that's probably not going to be around 15 years from now, or might not be around. Didn't want to panic anybody thinking that I have foreknowledge of that. I don't. But at any rate, they want to control that, and there are probably other reasons why they don't want you to be able to get that many. But if you're using it for Blizzard Balance, there's no reason to limit it. So maybe they'll come out with a way to differentiate between the two uses, so that they can put a cap on how much is used towards game time, while not maintaining any kind of a cap on balance. And that's what a lot of people are hoping for, myself included. I think it would be good to have that wide open, because somebody like me, honestly, and I don't have the most gold. I mean, there are plenty of people who have a ton more gold than I have. But at the level of gold that I have, I would have to stop making gold for a very long time before I ran out of gold just with normal use. I mean, you only use up so much on repair costs,
Yeah, so, it depends on what's going on. Demon invasions. No, I'm kidding.
No, that would be you, not me. But again, you, not me. But but no. Anyway, having another way to spend gold. I mean, as it stands right now, I'm spending it on mounts, and and TCG mounts are getting more and more expensive, and so that's kind of solving itself. The gold cap being raised means that anything that I get off of the black market is probably going to be more expensive as well. But I like the idea of if I want to do some character transfers, I can use it for that. Or a lot of people are interested in if they decide that they want to buy Diablo, or they want to buy Overwatch or something like that, they can spend it on those other games. A lot of ways that you can convert your gold into cash that way. So
there's a real easy right now with the cap being what it is. There's a real easy way to run out of tokens here.
well, and people are worried, and there are some people that are already going to be affected by that because they have in advance when tokens drop down real low, which when they dropped down to like 30K on North American realms at one point, 31K, they were sitting there for a little while.
Right, I know we know somebody who bought about 7 months worth of game time.
And I know of people that bought more than that.
Right.
Because while they're low, why not get them there? But you bump up against the cap, and the last thing you want to do is to hit that cap, and then they announce, "Hey, we're going to let you use those for something else." Oh, but you're at your cap. So people are hoping that that's not the case, and I have confidence because it's a moneymaker for Blizzard. I think they're going to find a way to make it work. So that's what I would suspect. So yeah, they're going to, they've got that on there. There's the reaction to it. It's not even live yet, and they've had this massive reaction. I do have news for anybody who's looking to buy tokens. They're going to continue to go up because the demand for the tokens is going to outstrip the demand for using them to get gold. And in my opinion, it's just going to keep going that direction.
Right.
And that's going to drive the price up. That's the way it works. So, just the ability on the horizon to use it for something else. Like, for instance, I won't use tokens to buy game time. I do check the price of tokens because I think it's a good barometer for what the economy is doing. And so I check it every day when I'm on the game. But the only time I've ever bought tokens was to use on RAF accounts, recruiter friend accounts, so that I can get the recruiter friend mounts that I didn't have. There were a couple I didn't have. And so I did that just to get that. I converted them into mounts, basically, which is what I do when I buy TCG mounts anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I personally won't use gold to pay for my game time, but a lot of people do. But even that being said, if I'm limited to 36 every 2 years, I'm not going to be able to do a whole bunch of transfers or use them as I would probably do to buy the mounts that are sold for in-game cash. So there are a lot of mounts that are $20, $25 that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spend real money for those mounts. No matter how cool I think they might be, I just won't do it. But if I can convert gold into a way to do that, you bet I'll do that, and I'll buy a ton of them. And there are a lot of people that are going to do the same thing. So be aware. Every indication is that game tokens are going to continue to climb. I would not be surprised if by February or March, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 100K on the tokens. I know in
other games you and I have played in that they actually have a similar token type system where the players actually can sell it in that game's in-game auction house. And certain servers, the price of those things goes crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's a supply and demand thing.
I don't think they're going to. I don't know if they're going to do that in
no, because it's not going to be player controlled. You don't have a bunch of.
No, I don't know if they're going to change it to be player controlled. I don't think they will.
No.
I would be super happy if they did.
But there's still a limited supply of them, and the more people buying them, the higher they're going to raise the price.
Oh yeah. So anyway, moving on from that, before we get into our main topic, I did want to mention that right now Blizzard is having its annual Black Friday sale.
There we go.
And I think that's going on until the 28th, I believe, which is Monday.
I think it was the 28th, yeah.
So by the time I take care of my bat infestation and get this thing edited tomorrow, which, by the way, tomorrow is actually, it's already 2 a.m., so I'll say today. So hopefully by Saturday night, this will be up for everybody to hear. And if you're not aware of the Black Friday sale, you'll have time to take advantage of it after hearing this, hopefully. But anyway, one thing of note for us goblins, of course, is just like every year, a copy of WoW is $4.99. So, nice little reduction.
That gives you all the way up to Warlords.
Yes, it gives you everything except for Legion.
Right.
And now, I've done Recruiter Friend so many times, I know how it works. If you do the trial account, which is free. And when you do the trial account, immediately they send you an offer to get the game with all the expansions for $10. Normally, $20. So they already cut it in half there. This is half of that. So nice little discount, and these don't expire. I've got a couple still that I've had for over a year that I haven't used yet, but I've got them here ready to use. And in all honesty, I'm waiting for them to change Recruit a Friend to work all the way up to 100. I know they're going to make that jump, and when they do, I'll take advantage of that then probably. But anyway, so if you're planning on boxing any accounts in the near future, I would say within the next year, before the next Black Friday, you might want to check it out. Of course, there are deals on other Blizzard games, but surprisingly, no discount on Diablo 3, which seems a little strange with Diablo's 20th anniversary, but I guess since they just did the Battle Chest special with the game and the expansion right after BlizzCon, they figured they wouldn't do a discount on top of a discount, which kind of makes sense.
Right.
But anyway, that's going to bring us to our topic this week, which is deciding which gold making method is right for you. Over the years, there's a question that I've gotten many times, and it's, which gold making method should I choose? And this kind of goes beyond World of Warcraft and other games that I've played, where making in-game currency has always been something that I've concentrated on a bit. I've had people ask me, well, how can I make gold, or how can I make in-game currency? And then the next question after I tell them 5, 6, 7, 8 ways to make currency, it's, well, which one should I choose? And, that can be a really difficult question to answer. And, the right answer for one person is absolutely the wrong answer for another. And, we're all different. We all have different ways that we approach things. This week, we're going to try to help you determine which one's best for you, as well as when to cut bait when these methods are no longer producing. And Mac and I have had to make these decisions ourselves. Mac, why don't you give an example or two of some gold making methods that you decided to move on from?
One of the methods just for making passive gold on Dalaran, for when Legion first came out, the Goblin Gliders, it wasn't a whole lot of gold, but you can make mass quantities for them really, really inexpensively. The price on the mats for those, if you're not farming the mats yourself, which takes too much time to be gold effective for me, if you're not farming, the price of the mats are way too high now. And so I had to change from making the Goblin Gliders to doing something else,
Right.
So it's, it's just kind of the price of the mats when you look at a sumptuous fur going for 5 gold each, and the true iron going about the same price, and it takes more of those, and then you've got guys in the auction house that have Goblin Gliders up for sale for 9 gold a piece. So it takes more than 2 pieces of those items to make, and you're still at a loss there. So that was one where I had to change methods. Again, it wasn't a lot, but if you could put 100 of them up in the auction house and come in the next day and have them sold.
Well, if I can comment on that one before you get on to anything else, something that is a big mistake, and I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but people forget to count opportunity cost. And it's a big mistake that people make where they say the mats were free because I farmed them. If you use your garrison resources, for instance, to buy sumptuous fur from the vendor there in the trader building, and so you didn't pay the 5.5 or whatever outrageous price Mac's been dealing with on that. You didn't pay that. You got them for free. And unfortunately, this is a podcast, so you can't see my air quotes that I just did. But you consider, it didn't cost me anything. I farmed the mats myself, or I got them from Garrison Resource. What you need to think of is they weren't free, because you could have taken them and put them on the auction house and got that 5.5 gold per or whatever they're going for. So they do have a value. And it's no different than if you find a $20 bill in the street, or I don't know, inside a wallet that doesn't have an ID in it, or inside a wallet that has an ID but you're having trouble reading. Okay, I won't get into mistakes that I've made in the past. But if you found money, the fact that you found that money does not make the money not have any value. And unfortunately, in the real world, there are people that approach life that way. There's an expression called found money. And when people say found money, they're referring to something that it was a windfall for them, and they weren't expecting it. And let me go blow it on a sports car that I wouldn't have bought if I'd made this money working at my job. And while it's okay to spend, your money or your gold on whatever you want, you do need to recognize that whether you anticipated having something or whether you had to pay for something, it still has value. You got to recognize the value in something. So always give an opportunity cost to things. Because if you're farming something, that's time that you were not able to spend on another gold making method. So it did cost you. It did cost you gold. It did cost you time. And these things need to be considered. So some of the people I know that you were up against that were selling these Goblin gliders so cheaply, they were getting the mats themselves. They obviously weren't making these things and selling them at a loss.
Oh, sure.
So they had a cheaper way to get them, but they were really leaving money on the table, and worse than that, they weren't applying any kind of value to their labor.
Right.
And,
well, there's been a lot of those guys that were selling them way too cheap, where they actually just became the middleman, and I just purchased them and sold them back and made a profit on them. There
is a fine line between your competitor and your supplier.
Yes, yeah.
At times that can definitely happen.
Well, again, the Goblin gliders. They're not big gold, but again, it was something that was passive. I put it in the auction house every couple days. I have to put them back in the auction house, but it gives you 400 or 500 gold a day. Right. It's just, out there while I'm out there making gold in other ways. Right.
So anything else you wanted to mention as far as any methods that come to mind that you had to kind of cut bait on besides that one?
Well, again, back in the garrison, back from Drainer, some of the things there still make money, some of them don't.
I think the garrison's actually a good example because for me, when I first started setting up my garrisons, I did the mine every day. I did the herb garden every day. I had the level 3 of both and everything. And after I started adding more and more alts that would have the garrison, it was a better thing for me to just buy in the auction house these things that were sitting there right in my garrison for me to just pick up off the ground. But the amount of time that would have taken me to go and pick them up off the ground, it took too long when you multiply it by multiple tunes. Now, if I only had one, it maybe would have been different. But I ran into a situation to where I made more gold by not using my mine and not using my herb garden. They were there if something crazy happened and I couldn't get the materials for a good price in the auction house. So, yeah, it makes a difference for how you're doing that, certainly. Another method, another thing that I was making gold with, I used to do the cata raids for gold, and as did a lot of people. And for me, I didn't stop doing them because of the nerf to them. I stopped doing them because I found, better ways to make gold, where I was making more gold for less time. Now, I found the cata raids enjoyable to do. I continued to do Firelands for some time. I still have a mount there in Firelands. One of the mounts I don't have, one I do. So I would still occasionally go back and do that, but I was doing that more for the chance at the mount than the gold that I would get. The gold was just a bonus.
I thought you were doing that to find that hole in the middle of the zone that you kept falling into or getting knocked into.
I did find that hole, and I did it without the aid of alcohol, unlike some people.
Well, the aid of alcohol allowed me to laugh hysterically at you.
Choosing the method that you use is the first decision to make, and that's really we're talking about the base method, not the specific method. So whether you're going to be farming raids or maybe you're farming mats off of mobs that are just outside the world, auction house flipping, sniping, you're crafting items to sell, or you're gathering herbs or whatever. selling power leveling services, selling carries. There's really an almost endless list of different base methods that you can use. And, it has to do with what you enjoy and how much time you have, because some methods are going to completely put you to sleep. Like for me, fishing puts me to sleep. Mac, I know that fishing is, it's okay with you. You're fine with that. It doesn't really.
Late at night, it gives me something to do when I can't do anything else, and
kind of a wind down when you're too drunk to be useful for anything. No, I'm sorry.
Firewater, good. It made me a lot of gold during last Dark Moon Fair. It made Mrs. Mac a ton of gold.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, and it also has to do with how much time you have. Certain methods of gold making, take more time than others. Some take more patience than others. Like sniping. Sniping takes a lot of patience. You're sitting there, you're not making a dime for a ton of time. Then all of a sudden you get a huge payday. Some are riskier than others, like sniping, auction house flipping. Some of these things are a little more risky than others.
Well, I definitely do not do the sniping. You know me. I'm a trade skill master. I unmastered it.
So really what we're saying here is you need to choose the method that you prefer.
I always preferred the rhythm method.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
I always found it to be very productive.
All right, well, your reproductive methods aside, calculating gold per hour. Let's talk about that. That's kind of the next thing. And
I think I've been shut down.
You're gonna cost us our rating here,
Okay.
But,
we're late. It's late. We're tired. More tired than usual. Oh my word! It's even late for me. What are you still doing up?
Yeah, I know, man. So
I've got a bottle of scotch over there staring at me.
So after you choose the base method that you want to go with, you want to start looking at the more specific ways that you can make gold within those methods. So if you're looking at farming raids, you're going to want to evaluate the different raids like we did previously, where we would go in and test how much gold per hour we were getting. Some raids are not all created equally. Some raids you're going to get 2, 3, 4 times as much gold in the time that it takes to run it. And
some of them, the boss mobs will throw a random thing out there. The boss has to do something that takes time that isn't in another dungeon.
Which makes it some
of the mechanics.
They can have mechanics in them that just make them unreasonable to do for the time. It cuts into the time. Auction house flipping. What things are you flipping? Crafting. What are you crafting? What are you gathering? All your you get more specific on your methods, and you start to compare them to each other and figure out the gold per hour. And you want to consider downtime, and you want to get a true gold per hour. One of the things that and this is actually fairly common if you go and you search YouTube videos on making gold, the headline will be somewhat clickbait, where it'll say something to the effect of
make $1 million gold an hour.
Yeah, 100,000 gold per hour on this method. And it'll be something that you can do once per week, and you make, takes 5 minutes, and you make a little bit of gold. And if you were able to do it back to back over and over and over again, then it would add up to that much gold per hour. Or they will do a small sample of 3 or 4 minutes and then multiply it out to an hour, when it's not reasonable to assume that you could keep up that rate. So
RNG is a bugger. I mean, some of them I've gone in some old raid dungeons where I've made a ton of gold, and I run it 3 or 4 more times, and I've made about a third the gold I made the times before. Oh
yeah, and you want to keep in mind when you're calculating your gold per hour. There's an exception to that. If you have an alt army, and you have something that is say you had something, for instance, that was it was a once per hour kind of thing that you could do, but you had 30 characters that you could run through and do it. All of a sudden you can calculate if it takes 5 minutes to do something, but you've got 20 characters that you can run through it, then you can calculate, how much per hour. That was probably the least coherent way I could say that. Pretty bad. It sounded bad in my ears, and I'm sure. Wow. So.
Sorry.
So.
You can edit that out.
No, I don't think I will.
I don't think so, huh? Anything that makes me look foolish, we'll keep that in. I understand how this goes now. You're trying to force me to become the editor.
Well, just so people know where we stand in the show. I don't think so, Tim.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. But
excuse me while I staple my hand to this piece of paper.
So there are times where maybe you with a single character can't maintain a per hour rate based on what you're looking at. But if you have enough alts to make that happen, especially if it's something you're not going to do for hours on end, you're going to do it for 1 hour per day. You can do it once per day. It takes 5 minutes, but you've got 20 characters. Then that's okay. Then you can calculate it that way. But whatever, however you're doing it, make sure you don't shortchange yourself. Don't convince yourself that you're making more gold than you really are. And travel time is another big one. I mean, if it takes you a while to get to this spot, and you're bringing 10 alts there, you got to figure travel time for every one of those alts. Make sure that you don't make wrong assumptions about how much gold you're going to make. So do the math on it. Do some testing. Always do some testing, especially before you make a huge commitment to a particular gold making method. And so after you've figured out your, what you think is going to be your best method, after considering all of that, make sure that you have good record keeping, because there's nothing worse than thinking you're making a certain amount of gold and not keeping the records. You find out at some point, hey, I didn't really make as much as I thought I was going to make. But I keep daily records on my gold making. And what I do is mine's at a per server, per realm, I should say, per account. So I have 2 accounts. So like, for instance, on Dalaran, I've got a column for account A on Dalaran and account B on Dalaran. And so I know by account, I don't go by character. That would be too much record keeping. But I know, with what I'm doing on the different realms, on the different accounts, I can kind of tell what's working and what's not working. And I can cut bait and move on when I see that it's not working. Record keeping will help you do that. It'll help you know where you're making your gold. And if a new method pops up that is going to make you a huge amount of gold, and you've got to free up some time so that you can do that, you need to know which things you want to stop doing to make room. And I can't stress that enough, that I have done that. I have temporarily made the wrong decision and then had to backtrack and change which ones I canceled doing. And it's an ever-evolving thing. You always got to be making changes and stay on top of it and keep an open mind to something. You can get really attached to something. I'm pretty attached to doing the farm and the Sky Golem. It's paying off really well. The day that I log in and I just don't see the gold in that, I won't be doing it anymore, and I'll move on to something else. I won't get so attached to something, that I lose sight of the fact that it stopped being profitable.
Oh yeah, if it takes more time than it's worth. But like I said, on Whisperwind, I spend 10 minutes a day and I make 100,000 a month. Just the 10 minutes a day I spend over there, that's worth my time.
Right. So ultimately, what we're trying to convey in this podcast is, the gold making methods that are right for you can really only be determined by you. Hopefully, we've given you a few tools to kind of how to calculate that up and figure it out. Make sure, like I said, you keep an open mind, constantly reevaluate your methods. Do it very often so that you're ready to move on when things go south, because one thing that's for sure about MMOs, they always change. Something that is going to make a lot of gold today is going to be completely worthless down the road. And don't get overly invested either. It's just like some people that will only set up a character that has, all their characters have one profession only, and it's the flavor of the month, and then they have to start all over when that when that profession isn't quite producing.
Yeah, which is why I always try to have at least one of every profession.
It's a good way to go, to at least have one. Some things you don't have to have a whole bunch of copies of. You don't have to have repeated. Some things are more profitable to have multiples of. Anything that has cooldowns, sure. that kind of goes without saying. Typically, tailoring and alchemy are two that have cooldowns that you can take advantage of. And engineering, another one that has cooldowns. Well, I think that's going to about wrap up this week's show. Why don't we tell everybody how they can get in contact with us?
Well, you can reach us at Mac, that's M-A-C, at GoblinGoldcast.com, or Dex, D-E-X, at GoblinGoldcast.com. We're at Goblin Goldcast on Twitter, or you can visit us on Facebook.
And don't forget, you can leave us a voicemail on our website, GoblinGoldcast.com, and please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or TuneIn Radio if you listen to us there.
And we'll see you next week.
Now go make some gold.
If you liked it, you should have put a larger, more elaborate ring on it.